Hello, hello. Here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha with the Paranormal World Show. You know, this show for the thinking global citizen. And we're going to have some fun because we're going to do some discoveries tonight. We're going to get to hear about things that maybe you haven't heard before. And yeah, I'm Augie, and I'm the host tonight. And we are transmitting on 44 different platforms around the world, and one of them is the Conscious Awakening Network. Got to go over and visit those guys because they got close to 50 different shows over there that talk about all the stuff that both you and me are not supposed to know about. It gets interesting. I spent some extensive time over there, and they have some good stuff you need to see. And And also, if you are watching this on YouTube, that's the place to be because then you can participate in the show, in the chat room. If you write questions, uh, put it in capital letters so we can see the question and then maybe we can answer it or at least comment on it if it's beyond our pay grade. So I will. Also, let you know that Nori and I have created a spiritual think tank. You should consider coming and having a look at it. We do incredible things. We create out of seemingly nothing sometimes because we found the language that we reach into the quantum existence and find things that we want in our life and we bring it back into the physical. You should come and visit. If you want to check it out, send us an email to themastermindconnection@gmail.com. And for right now, I want to introduce you to the guest we have, and that is Jeff Woolwine. And he is a 20 plus year researcher into the extraterrestrial issue and also the petroglyphs, the written recordings of the past. And he's got some phenomenal pictures and videos of stuff. And I usually have things together, but I don't this time. So I'm going to ask him to say a few things about himself, about what he has been involved with over the years. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you have done so much. Would you talk a little bit about some of the things? You have TV documentaries and things. Just talk a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I guess we could start off at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been seeing these things in the sky ever since I was a kid. This is the reason why I went on a hunt, on a quest to find out exactly what the Phoenix Lights really was. And so that's basically what I did in 2004. I heard that the Phoenix Lights were back, and so I hunted them down. And so in the summer of 2004, I was filming these lights in an area in which it's very important. Hopefully, we'll get to that later in the show. But they're on the east side of South Mountain. I was filming them almost on a nightly basis there. And uh, I was making news reports and news interviews back then. And the end result was they got the military involved, saying that we're all seeing flares 150 miles away. Well, that didn't cope with me. I knew that these lights were right here in the valley. They weren't, way out in the distance there. These things were here by South Mountain.
Mhm.
And, uh, I love archaeology. I love history. I've been studying archaeology for years, way before I started filming and studying UFOs. And so when I got word that there were petroglyphs on South Mountain, the Phoenix Lights happened back in 1997. Now this is 2004, and no one's talking about the petroglyphs on the mountain. No one's talking about the history of Phoenix, Arizona. None of that. And so in 2005, I moved to the mountain because I wanted to get, a better shot of these things. And so I moved to South Mountain on the east side, about a mile away from it.
Mm.
And I sat there for years. And that first year, I saw things coming and going from the mountain out there. And, I video recorded it, I saw it. And when I went out there the next day, because I'm thinking spaceships, I'm thinking crafts, I'm thinking, technology. But when I get out there, what do I see? I find a boulder with spirals on it and a stick figure man looking up at the exact same thing that I filmed the day before. And that triggered a memory in my head that I remember seeing a Native American on Channel 8 in Phoenix, Arizona, and he was up there on South Mountain talking about the rock art. So I called him up and I was like, hey, can you take me up on South Mountain? I'm studying the rock art. I didn't really tell him what I was doing yet because I didn't want to scare him away. But I just wanted to, can you explain to me the rock art and everything else? So we went up there, we spent a couple hours, and he's talking about spirals and doorways, and when it comes to the spirals, he's saying that the spirals is a symbol for a vortex or a
Mhm.
symbol for an emergence point. And he says when a spiral ends in a crack, he says that's the emergence point. That's the doorway into the underworld. He says when the spiral ends up in the sky, he says there's a vortex in the sky. I said, a vortex? He goes, yes, a vortex. He's like, that's what the spiral represents. It's like looking down into a hole. Well, we went over a lot of things and a lot of stuff, he was saying this and that, but he wasn't saying anything about crafts or extraterrestrials. He was calling them spirits, spirits of the earth and the sky. And so when we got back down on the mountain, I that's when I hit it on him. I was like, "Are you familiar with the Phoenix Lights?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, there was somebody last year filming the lights." And I said, "Yes, that was me." He goes, "That was you?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "I have a theory on that these petroglyphs on the mountain has something to do with the petroglyphs that we're seeing in the sky." Because we have strange things in the sky. Now we have strange markings on the rocks out here. There has to be a connection.
Yeah.
Well, we won't happen what happened from there, but he kind of didn't want to talk to me after that. When
Really?
some Native Americans, when you talk to them about this, it's like a taboo. You're really not supposed to be talking about these things in the sky, and because of their history, and their history doesn't tell us a very good one. And so that was pretty much it on that. But at least I got my information. And watching these things, I'm like, how can a spaceship, get into a little crack like that? Until I actually saw what he was talking about, and I soon realized that these things were not crafts. That this was like another living creature, another living being. I find it fascinating on how in Mexico we talk about the Quetzalcoatl, the feathered
Mhm.
serpent.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that Quetzalcoatl was alive and well and flying around South Mountain. And I have filmed that many times. And there's a petroglyph on South Mountain where men are looking up at flying serpents in the sky, flying orbs, flying diamonds. Okay, this is something completely different. And so when I brought this to the news in 2005, they're like, hey, this is a whole, concept on the Phoenix Lights. Now we're talking about petroglyphs. No one has ever done this before.
Mhm.
And we verified the same things that I was recording on the rocks was symbols that was carved on the mountains by the Hohokam Indians over 1,000 years ago. And I soon realized that these things were alive; these aren't crafts. And right around at that time, Pat Uskert was in town, and he had an idea. He was working with UFO magazine at the time, and he had this idea called UFO Road Trip. And this was way before UFO Hunter Show, way before Ancient Aliens, way before Skinwalker Ranch. I
Mhm.
was up there on South Mountain connecting these things that we see in the skies today to the rock art on the mountains. And once he got word of what I was doing, he contacted me, and I did a 7-page article for UFO Magazine in 2005. I then went on to do the pilot for the UFO Hunter Show and Ancient Aliens TV series.
Mhm.
And back then we were calling it UFO Road Trip, and then they when it finally hit on the History Channel, they ended up turning it into the UFO Hunter Show.
Mhm.
And then in 2007 they come back and we actually do an episode called Arizona Lights, and you can still see this episode on Roku and other channels where you get the UFO Hunter Show
Yeah.
capabilities at.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, dude, they're like, Jeff, you cannot say living creatures. You can't go saying light orbs or living entities or any of that. He says, you're filming some bizarre stuff. He goes, the public is not ready for this type of information yet. Well, that just kind of floored me. I'm like, wait a minute, this is what's here. We've already proved that the petroglyphs are talking about something different. These aren't crafts. This is something completely different.
Yeah.
But I'm not allowed to talk about it. Okay. They say, well, you have to talk, you have to say crafts, you have to say spaceships, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. Now, over 20 years later, right now we're talking about jellyfish. And lo and behold, Pat Uskert gets a hold of me and he's like, dude, I said, didn't I tell you? He goes, yeah, we knew you were right. We just wasn't able to talk about it because, this was a new concept.
Yeah.
This hasn't been discovered yet. And matter of fact, I just got an email from Pat Uskert today, and he sent me something that was filmed in Texas. And I said, dude, I was the first one to film these jellyfish and connected to the rock art. He goes, yes, you're right, but we just wasn't able to talk about that on the show because the public wasn't ready for it. Well, okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the public's ready for it now because now we're seeing these jellyfish in the sky.
Yeah.
And so let's get back and let's go deep into
Yeah.
this.
Could it
Okay.
could it be also that these lights could be what we today would call plasma ships?
And again, we're when we say shifts or crafts, we're thinking an outer shell with somebody in it. I don't
Yeah.
believe that's the case here. I believe each light is a living creature, is a living being. We
It
have many different
comes.
types of things that are visiting us here.
Yeah.
Like the day stuff, we have the jellyfish now. They're morphing, they're changing shape,
Hmm.
and they're alive. They're conscious. They know who's watching, who's not watching.
Yeah.
Crafts and aliens and from another planet, that's all fun and good. I have seen some things in the sky that could resemble a craft. I've seen a black triangle. I've seen flying jacks in the sky. Could that
Mhm.
be a possible spaceship? Yes, why not? I'm open to that. But what
Yeah.
I'm really mostly concerned about here is something that we're all seeing, everybody now, is lights and orbs and weird
Yeah.
things in the sky. And that's what we are really dealing with. And the petroglyphs talk about this. This is the credibility here, not hearsay of a craft, not
Hmm.
hearsay of March 13th, 1997, a huge spaceship flew over the city of Phoenix. There is no evidence of this whatsoever. The only evidence we have of March 13th, 1997 is lights on the west side of Phoenix, Arizona. And we only have 4 videos of this. So if thousands and thousands of people saw this alleged craft going 8 miles an hour in a V-shaped, mile long craft, then surely somebody would have filmed this. And check this out. Why do we have videos of what really happened March 13th, 1997? It's because we had sky watchers out there originally looking for these lights because they were filming lights weeks and nights prior to March 13th, 1997. So my point is, if anything was going to fly over the city of Phoenix, these people would have got it on film. But yet we don't. We have nothing flying over the city of Phoenix March 13th, 1997, but a bunch of lights on the west side of Phoenix. Now, there's a lot of people making books and profiting and selling movie tickets and Hurricanes theaters and blowing this way out of proportion of what really happened for their own gain. And it's sad that they are doing this because that's not what is going on here. Okay, what is
Yeah.
truly going on is what the petroglyphs are talking about and what we're seeing in the skies today, and what we can read in some of these ancient scrolls, because
Hmm.
that's the 3 points of credibility here. We can read about these things from 5 to 7,000 years ago, and then we can come up on some of these mountains and see the prehistoric photographs, and that's what they are, of UFO sightings, and now we can see these things for ourselves in the sky. This is all coming together now. This is the
Hmm.
credibility here. We read about it, we see their photographs, and now we see them for our own eyes. That is what's going on here.
Yeah. So I think it's very obvious that they are conscious. And, people see orbs all the time too, and I think there's a consciousness in those orbs. I
Yes.
don't I don't know what I should call it. Maybe spirit entities, or it could be a technology. I mean, the Germans back in 1943 and 44 and 45, they created those looked like plasma balls that they were able to fly around and observe with. But this
Well,
is this is
again,
techno. Yeah,
this is
yeah,
something completely different. I don't
yeah,
talk
I
about
I know.
technology. I don't talk about none of that stuff because we can't prove that. You know, what we can prove, I just went over the 3 points of credibility. The what we read
Yeah.
in some of these scrolls, what we can see on the rock art, and what we see for our own eyes. And what we see for our own eyes is lights and now jellyfish UAPs and orbs and lights and weird things. And
Hmm.
the history talks about these things as living creatures. As a matter of fact, the Native Americans, they don't call them ships, they call them spirits of the earth and sky. These are
Yeah.
living creatures. And it's fascinating too, because when the spirals, they say that that's the emergence point into the underworld. Now, some of the mountains, they there's two different types of carvings, okay, two different types of mountains. All right, let's talk about this for a minute. So
Uh-huh.
one mountain might talk about hunting and gathering, right, and seasons, or hunting and gathering, and kachinas and dance ceremonies and stuff like that. Then there's mountains there with spirals on them, and the archaeologist likes to call these things anthropomorphs, weird shape shifting, jellyfish, weird things that we're seeing in the skies now. The archaeologist likes to call them anthropomorphs. So those are the holy mountains. Those are the sacred mountains. This is what's carved on South Mountain and all the mountains around Phoenix, Arizona. When the spirals, the vortexes, and they say that they're going down into the underworld. But in a scientific analysis, why are these beings visiting these mountains, only visiting these certain mountains and other hotspots around the world? Well, it has everything to do with energy. Remember in the beginning when I said I was filming these lights on the east side of South Mountain in a certain spot? Well, there's a power plant there. This power plant was bored down into South Mountain and was helping generate our lights in the city. When that power plant is active, it attracts these light beings to this energy source. So that's basically it. That's the reason why these entities are visiting this mountain, is because of the fault line. And they're going down into the fault line to absorb that energy. That's why sometimes they just sit and they hover and they get real bright. They looks like balls of plasma energy. That's what's going on here. They're absorbing that energy. No one in ufology is talking about this. We are 20 years ahead of all these other UFO researchers. And that was the problem back in 2005 and 7 when I was trying to explain this to the UFO Hunter show. I didn't understand it back then, but I soon realized that I did, that I was 15 to 20 years ahead of all these researchers, and the public needed to catch up to this. So no one's talking about energy and fault lines. Okay, we're talking about today on your program, and also you can find my shows on YouTube and on Facebook, and we'll get into that later.
Yeah, before you get mention the name of that show on YouTube so people can get that right away.
So you can find me on YouTube under the Phoenix Lights, Petroglyphs in the Sky, Jeff Woolwine. There's a lot of other channels out there, but the Phoenix Lights, Petroglyphs in the Sky, it's all one word on YouTube. Find me there, and also on Facebook. Contact me there. Uh, Jeff Woolwine, the Phoenix Lights, Petroglyphs in the Sky. So yeah.
And while we're at that, you also have some books out.
Yes, you can just search my name on Google. Uh, what is that? Amazon. Okay, I knew it was
Yeah,
one of them words. On
yeah,
Amazon, I have a few books out. So one book is 15 years of research. The other book is a hard and soft cover, and that just basically goes over the history of Phoenix, Arizona, because the petroglyphs, the Phoenix Lights, has a history with Phoenix. This has been
Yeah.
going on for 1,000 years. This is nothing new. The Phoenix lights and everything else visiting this mountain, the petroglyphs holds the information on what we're seeing in the skies today.
Hmm. Well, we have some stuff going on down in Tucson too. And I think
Now,
that there are some people, when they come to these orbs that we see pictures of everywhere, they're able to communicate with them somehow. They can say, come, and then the balls come closer.
you know what? So some of those petroglyphs, I proved this in Phoenix when I was studying the glyphs. Uh, I was up there on South Mountain. I was hiking South Mountain for over 15 years, from one square inch to the other. I found all the glyphs. Well, most of them anyway. There's probably some that I missed, but I found all the information. And I soon realized from some of the Native Americans that these petroglyphs has the power to invoke the spirits. And so I tried that on a few of the sightings up there, a few of the
Hmm.
locations. I say, hey, you guys are cool. Why don't you come and see us? Well, either they did that day or the next few days they did. So I believe that. I believe that because I have done that plenty of times. When you go up there and you talk to the spirits, they will come and see you.
Yeah,
But hopefully, we'll have a chance to talk about the history of these beings.
yeah, yeah. That dates back a long time. There are Native Americans that has been talking about it almost forever.
Yes, yes, because they're telling us. Some of them tell us we're in the third world. Some of them tell us we're in the fourth. Some say we're in the fifth. It all boils down to each time the world changes, each time the world starts over again, these beings are here to help mankind. Well, that's the interpretation at the in the beginning, because man needs these things to survive. I mean, look at the Hopi. Look at some of their stories. They say that the spider women, they learned how to weave their baskets by watching spider women weave her web up into the sky. Well, spider women flew by my window in 2005, and I believe it was like April, and that made video of the day on News Channel 3. And so, yeah, a lot of what if these myths and legends, what if that's really true? I mean, look at it. These legends and these myths had to have started somewhere. All right. And so it basically boils down to these creatures, these beings that we see in the skies today. And,
Hmm.
I believe this is the biggest cover up of all time, is that these things has a history. These things have been with us forever. They've always been here with us. Some think they're from another planet. Some think, extraterrestrial. Well, what if they're interterrestrial? What if they have always been with us all this time? What if this is a new species of life? Just as the oceanographers has been finding new species of life below the ocean, this is a new species of life that has, in my opinion, in my studies, this is what I've been finding out. They have always been here with us, and they're slowly but surely starting to come out. And maybe we'll talk about the reasons on why we're seeing them so much in the skies today. But that's where history is telling me. I went down this road when I first started this, and thinking like everybody else. This is great. This is spaceships, aliens, technology. This is wonderful. It's a miracle. But then over the 10-year process, 15-year process, I did a 180 on this. I'm like, hold the phone. This is not what we were led to believe on what UFOs and all this crazy stuff we see in the skies today. This is something different, and this is scary stuff. I mean,
Hmm.
look at this. We're talking jellyfish. These things are morphing. They're changing shape, and they're going in the mountains, man. They're coming and going from the mountains, right? So this is something completely different. And, I understand why the History Channel said, well, the public isn't ready for this because it's scary.
Yeah.
We understand technology. Why? Because we've built spaceships that has traveled to other planets, has traveled to the moon, we've got rovers orbiting around on Mars, this and that. So, yeah, this is what we understand. But when it comes down to something, let's say, maybe supernatural, that's just going to go way over everybody's heads. This is going to be completely different to the public, And it is scary. It's a scary thing, and the history of these beings is even scarier.
Yeah. So that when the lights come and they go into the mountain, can we theorize on why? Maybe there is a home, maybe it's a base in there.
Well, I just went over that. They're going down into the fault lines. That's the energy. It's not anything where somebody can uh, open up a doorway and go into these tunnels, and there's a big uh, base under there. That's not what's really going on here. It's the fault lines. They're going down into these energy sources to absorb the energy.
Hmm.
A lot of them, that's their home. So that and the petroglyphs are the prehistoric photographs of what happened in that area, and the spirals are. So when you see a spiral there, that is the emergence point. That is the doorway. That's where these things come and go from. Is right there where that carving is at. This is the reason why we find some petroglyphs over here, but nothing over there, is because nothing happened there. So when we see a petroglyph site here, that is a written testimony. That is a prehistoric photograph of what happened right there in that area. And when we understand the petroglyphs, when you look at the petroglyphs, you have to look at the whole landscape. Many of these rock art on South Mountain is up high on cliffs. And why is that? Because the artist wants us to look up. He's telling you, look, I saw something in the sky. So what better than to carve it in the sky? So he went up on the top of that cliff there, and he carved this flying snake, and he's telling you, look, I saw this in the sky. I don't have a video camera. I don't know what cell phone cameras are, but I'm doing what I have. I'm doing what I can. I'm telling you, look, you need to look up if you want to see my art, because I saw this in the sky.
Hmm. Yeah, those spirals and the other forms of carvings and paintings, it is a form of written history.
Absolutely. Yes, it's our history. They're prehistoric photographs of what happened in the city of Phoenix. And let's look at it. The fiery bird Phoenix rose out from the ashes of the formal civilization. Well, what happened to that formal civilization? Because Hohokam is a Pima word for the people who got missing, the people who got taken away, because we don't know what happened to these people. They lived here for 1,000 years in this valley. They were masters of of the canal systems and watering stuff, and then all of a sudden they disappeared with no trace. Archaeologists wants us to believe, well, they simply migrated somewhere else because it got too hot. There's no evidence of that on where they went. But the oral tradition and what the petroglyphs are telling us what happened to these people is something completely different. And that's what the scary part is.
Yeah. And there is, in fact, here in the Tucson area, there's also petroglyphs and drawings and stuff that indicate that they were for 1,000 to 2,000 years ago. There were civilizations here. The Phoenicians were here. The Vikings were here. The Jewish race was here. There were people from all over the place, and they made these carvings, so they created their own history. But how far back do you think those spirals date back in our recorded history?
We can't really carbon date the rocks or the petroglyphs, but what we can carbon date is the pottery shards left behind.
Yeah.
And we can learn a lot from the pottery shards. We can determine what area it came from, what location it came from, whether it came from California or Utah, or if it's native to the ground there. And we can carbon date, when it was made and everything else like that. And so that's what the archaeologist is going off of, mainly, is what was left behind, some of the artifacts, the pottery shards, and the beads, and all this other stuff that they're making, and they're telling us anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 years ago. But
Yeah.
this has been going on for over 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Wow. Yeah, we're getting down to the bottom of the hour here. And for those of you that joined us late, we are talking with Jeff Woolwine. He has been a 20 plus year researcher into the weird stuff going on in the sky. And we're talking about petroglyphs, the old written writings of our history in the southwest of the United States. And there is something in that written history that we need to know about. And he's probably the one that has done most research on this. So lend him your ear. This is an education. So, yeah. What kind, let me rephrase that question. You know, these lights, they could be, in my limited view of things, they could be plasma intelligences or consciousness in form of plasma. Because I also interviewed a guy that had been at Area 51, and he said there was a spaceship there. Then when he touched the side of the spaceship, he knew the ship had consciousness and it was alive. But that was a ship. Now, this may be an upgrade from that. They don't need the ship anymore. They are pure consciousness. Could that be something like that?
Well,
Yeah, I know.
I mean, history doesn't tell us that. What history talks about, basically from the beginning of the earth on, when we read some of these scrolls on how these beings were thrown to the earth because they got kicked out of where they used to be, and from there mankind worshiped these things as gods, and now that these beings is their home, the earth is now their prison, and but some has escaped. If we read some of these scrolls, they tell us some left and some stayed behind. I find it fascinating that we just now discovered a new planet way outside of our solar system with lights on it, and it's very possible that that planet, because it has a sun, that planet also might have seasons, and that's the key here, because I noticed watching these things, they were here like right before the equinox and after the solstice, and they really following the sun. And I learned when the sun positioned itself right over these fault lines, right over these energy spots, that's when it attracted these beings. And then as the equinox or the solstice progressed, the sun would move over another energy spot. So these things would follow the sun. And that's basically what the Native Americans are talking about when they talk about these spirals and these light and shadows that are cast down into these shadows and are going through the spirals into the crack, into the doorway there. The archaeologist wants us to believe, well, it's just telling us that it's telling them that it's time to plant corn because of changing of the seasons. That has nothing to do with changing of planting corn. That has everything to do when we're going to see these things return to this mountain, and what to look for. You see, the Native Americans, they've documented all of this for us. All we have to do is just simply have an open mind and not just say, oh, it's just, some crazy carving. But what if they're telling us what really happened to them? And this is their story. And this is, they saw the lights too. They saw the jellyfish too. And actually, they knew, they followed them because they were sky watchers too. And they knew when these things were going to come back and visit these mountains and when they were going to leave and then come back. And that's exactly what was going on in South Mountain. The first year, I was seeing these things coming and going. After the equinox, they were gone. And then the equinox would come back, or the solstice, the changing of the seasons, these things would come back. So it was a pattern, a pattern, a pattern. And then the next year, it repeated itself. And the third year, it repeated itself. So now I am in Tucson, Arizona. Those of you who have been following me on my Facebook and YouTube channel know that last summer I was recording lights over here at Mount Lemon. And all summer. They were there every night all summer. And they started off in May on the west side at midnight. And as the months progressed, they slowly but surely were moving east. And so the next month they were coming in at 2. The next month they were coming in at 3. The next month they were coming in at 4. And they were moving. They were changing. They were changing the areas of the mountain. And by the time it hit October, they were clear out of the city. I was chasing them all summer last summer. Every night I was chasing these things, and I finally chased them out of the city by October, and they were coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they were way out. And that's when I kind of stopped. But between the monsoon and the weather and the clouds, I got what I could. And I was telling everybody, look, if this is the pattern that I was filming in South Mountain in Phoenix, then we should probably expect to see some day sightings, or these things will come back in January. And lo and behold, they're back in January now. And so I'm really happy about that. But this time it's different. This time it's different. So they are further out now. Like in May of last summer, they were really close, right? And they were real close next to the mountain. They were big, bright orbs, right? And it was cool too because you could see them come in, and then right over that energy spot, they got really, really bright, sucking up that
Mm.
energy, and then they would fade out, and then more would come in, real bright, sucking up that energy, and then would fade out. I mean, it was like an intergalactic gas station that was going on out there, man. It was crazy stuff. But now they seemed like further north of the mountain, and I'm thinking, and they're coming in at 6:30 now, 6:30 at night, and I'm thinking now that they're kind of coming closer north towards the mountain. So I'm thinking maybe in a couple more months, by like, I don't know, like they'll I think they're moving closer. Okay, let's just put it that
Yeah.
way. And in a few more months, they're going to be real close, and they'll probably be coming in at 9, 10 o'clock, and they're going to be right there. So that's where we're at now. Make sure you follow me on my Facebook and YouTube channel, Phoenix Lights, Petroglyphs in the Sky, for new upcoming orb UFO sightings.
Okay. Have you seen anything in the Tucson Mountains right north of town?
As far as petroglyphs or
No,
UFOs,
I was thinking more of lights
you know,
because I
I
have.
haven't. I haven't. So I've seen, so these lights they'll go over the city, over Tucson, but they'll end up over there at Mount Lemon,
Mhm.
So now there has been recordings of this one light orb that was filmed in the daytime. I think it was at the Recon Mountains. Now that's far north. Excuse me. Yeah, north of, or no, south of Tucson.
Mm.
And somebody captured a great orb hovering over the mountain there, absorbing the energy. That was great footage. It's on my video there.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. And then for the lights over Mount Lemon, have you tried to communicate with them and make ask come closer or communicate in any way and get any reaction from them?
So I've been following and hunting down these lights, ever since 2004, and they know when I'm coming, and they know, like, they're always one step ahead of everybody, even some of the airplanes that are following them out there. And so it's really hard for them to like get closer to you without getting too close. Uh, because some of the myths and legends, they tell you that their energy is just too powerful for humans,
Mhm.
that it'll kill, if they get too close. And I think that's probably some of the reasons some of those airplanes don't get too close to them, because when they get back, they might have like radiation poisoning or something like that.
Mm.
So now some of these airplanes, they kind of stay away from them, but they are watching what's going on in here, but they're keeping their distance.
Yeah. Yeah, there is also southwest of Tucson, there is also an area where there is a lot of light activity. And there's a friend of mine down there, Chris down there. He's taken, I mean, he's got hundreds and hundreds of pictures of light. One of them actually came close and landed in his backyard, and he had a picture of it.
Okay.
Uh, I know maybe you're familiar with this, but he has picture evidence, and there's no way to explain that away. These lights are real.
Yes. These jellyfish and these light orbs that we're seeing, this is something that, like I've said before, has always been with us. And now look at the way the world is progressing. Look at all the wars. that's going on now, and look how close we are.
Mm.
And the back in World War II, the pilots were chasing these foo fighters, these red, orange, amber lights everywhere.
Yeah.
So every time man seems to go to war with each other, these lights, these entities are here watching, and they're
Mhm.
waiting. They're waiting for mankind to need them once again to survive. But we have to look at the history, and the history tells us that that's what happened to the Hohokam, that they learned from these beings. There's so much they learned, and then after 1,000 years, they vanished off the history of the planet. Those of you who want to find out what happened, you can check out my books and check out my other shows because it's a lot of detail. And But my point is, so we see the lights now in our history. We see the lights now. What does that say about our future? If the formal civilization saw the lights and dealt with the lights and interacted with the lights, and they came up missing with no trace of where they went in history, what does that say about our future now? Because we are seeing the exact same things that the Hohokams, that the Native Americans,
Yeah.
that the ancients ones saw. And here's another kicker. These are the same beings. These are the same lights. These things don't die. So
Yeah.
when you see that light in the sky, you're looking at something that is prehistoric, that has been here the whole time.
Hmm. Yeah, they've been around a long time. And actually, here in Arizona is not the only place either. There are other
Oh no,
places around the world.
absolutely,
But these,
absolutely.
yeah, it happens other places.
Right. And, so everyone's asking me, well, what about the New York? Because, they're flying these drones. That's what happens. So these light orbs, I mean, they're huge, they're big. And if you're paying attention, you can see them with your naked eye, and they're big, bright, orange amber lights. And like I said, they were going east, so they went around, and now by the time they're in New York now, and there's a massive fault line over there at New York, and that's where these things are gathering at. And so now, they're sending up these drones. That's the cover story. First, it was balloons. Then the cover story was flares. Now the cover story is drones, right? And that's what was going on. So they put that in the news. All these drones, all this other place. So when somebody sees a light in the sky, they're going to say, "Oh, that's a drone," because the news was talking about it.
Yeah.
But what if it isn't, right? So they're covering, they're masking up what's going on with the orbs and the drones.
Yeah. That's what they call plausible denial.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And
and
because they say somebody saw one of those drones that had four propellers on it, Okay, that's what everybody talking about. It's because that
yeah,
explains it away.
sure. Um, but when you study it and you actually look at it, yeah, I mean, any intelligent human being can decipher what a drone looks like and what something else, that you've never seen before
Yeah.
looks like. So, right.
Yeah. Some of those lights they're saying come out of the ocean.
Yeah, sure. Because why? There's fault lines there.
Yeah.
There's fault lines under the ocean. So of course it's just natural. This is a natural phenomenon that's been going on ever since the beginning of time. When you ask the mountains about these lights, they're going to say, "Yeah, they've been visiting me ever since I've been here. This is nothing new." You know?
I the Hopi Indians, they talk about these things a lot. They talk about communication with spirit entities
Mhm.
that even the ant people, that kind of
Oh
look
yeah.
like the little gray.
Oh sure.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Mhm.
and what the Hopi talking about, they don't come from another planet. They come from underneath the earth.
Yes, absolutely. Mhm.
So, have you looked into that?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I've studied
Yeah.
all of them. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why I went a complete 180 on this. I'm thinking other planets, extraterrestrial, but the evidence is telling me interterrestrial.
Hmm.
This is something that has always been with us, that are in the mountains. They're in the earth here. So
Yeah.
this is their planet also.
They live here too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and they are probably a little smarter than we are, so we should look to them. I and try to communicate with them because I
Well,
think,
these things are scary, and they are responsible for mankind's disappearance back in the day. So, in my opinion, in history, the history is telling us this is not good for us. This is not good for mankind. Okay,
yeah,
but there are good ones, all right? And we can read in some of these ancient scrolls where the good ones actually help mankind out. All right. So we have, and there in history, we read that there was some kind of battle going on, the good ones and the bad ones over humans. And
yeah,
obviously, the good ones must have won because we're here today. It's interesting too because in India they talk about these Vietnamese and how there was a war that was going on,
yeah.
and these good ones were using these special weapons to shoot these things out of the sky with, and uh, and when we look at India, some of the artwork we see many arms, right? Some of the elephants and these other demonic creatures, they have 8 arms to them, right? Well, I found something like that on South Mountain. There's a petroglyph panel there where this guy with these many arms is holding this staff rod, and it looks like he's shooting up at what looks like a serpent man. And that was a story here. That was a story in India that when the war was over, that they buried their sacred weapons around the earth because eventually they're going to have to return to reuse these weapons again someday. And so when I saw that petroglyph inside Phoenix on South Mountain, where this guy is holding this looks like a staff weapon, shooting up at what looks like a serpent in the sky, Quetzalcoatl, I couldn't help but think, well, maybe some of the weapons are buried here on South Mountain because I have found a lot of tombs on South Mountain.
Mm.
The same stuff we find in Mexico is the same stuff we're finding in Phoenix, Arizona, as far as the history, the artifacts, the petroglyphs, and the tombs. And so yes, there are things buried on South Mountain left not only from the Hohokam but the Mayans as well. I mean, because look at history. I mean, Arizona was a part of Mexico,
Yeah.
and much like me, I follow the lights to South Mountain, and I believe this is how the natives got to this Valley of the Sun, is they followed these lights in the sky to these energy sources, and they performed sacrifice to them, and then some of them survived, and they buried stuff in the mountain there. And this is the reason why South Mountain is a government park. Okay, why would
Oh,
you make South Mountain a government park? Why don't you make a mountain a government park? Why don't you make the White Tank Mountains or some of these other mountains around the valley a government park? What is so special about South Mountain? Well, it's because the Mayan gold is there. All right. There's stuff buried there that they don't want you to find out.
yeah.
This is evidence not only that I've discovered, but also what the first park ranger, Charles Holberg, talks about in the 1930s in his journals. Okay. The Native Americans, they told Charles who the Hohokam people were, what happened to them, and what they left behind. And a matter of fact, he was known for chasing gold robbers off South Mountain who were looking for the gold. And then after he died in the late 1940s, they buried all his information for 80 years. Okay.
Really?
Until, yeah, all this information was buried in the Phoenix Downtown Library for 80 years. All right. Sure, they named a trail after him. Sure, they named a lookout point after him, Holbrook Lookout and Holbrook Trail. But that's basically all you know about Charles Holbrook until I started doing my research on South Mountain because of the Phoenix Lights, because of the petroglyphs. And I went to the Phoenix
Mhm.
Library and I went to the Arizona room and I said, hey, give me everything you have on South Mountain. They gave me this folder, and lo and behold, boom, Charles Holbrook was there talking about the Mayans, talking about the gold, talking about what happened to him. Oh my God, it was like everything that I discovered a year prior was evidence here written in the Phoenix Library, buried for over 80 years. So I photocopied all that stuff And that's what I'm basically going off of, because
Yeah.
I have history backing me up. I have a park ranger backing me up, and I have what's there, backing me up. There is no question, there's no doubt in my mind what is going on here. Their history, who the Hohokam people were, and what the Phoenix Lights really is.
Hmm. So I think we have conscious beings in form of light of different forms, balls or whatever, and
And they
then we.
shapeshift, they transform, they anthropomorph, they shapeshift. And I've seen it. So these lights and orbs that we see in the skies today, that's nothing. Get ready for something even more, because these lights and these orbs, they're going to anthropomorph, they're going to shapeshift, right? Some of them we're already seeing in the skies, they're called jellyfish now, but they're going to change, they're going to light, they're going to shapeshift, and right before your eyes.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. This
yeah.
is scary stuff. And, I really don't believe that the government will ever be any kind of disclosure because of the history of it. Because, you know, what I've seen, these are monsters. Okay. These things are coming right at me. All right. Look at some of my videos in 2005, 6, and 7 when I was out there on the mountain. These things are coming off the mountain and coming right at me. These are not crafts, these are living creatures. And some of it is just spectacular and scary. And I call them monsters, man.
Yeah.
And if it was little green guys in a spaceship, that would be okay, that would be a little bit more to understand. But this is something different, man. There's scary things going on in our skies now, and the government has been watching this way before I came around. They've been monitoring this, way I believe ever since President Roosevelt. I mean, he knew about what was going on. And that's where the evidence too is suggesting that it started pretty much with President Roosevelt when he sent his wife out to investigate the lands around the United States. And Mrs. Roosevelt came back and was talking about all this crazy stuff that she learned from the Indians, and it was demonic stuff. It was sacrificing to the gods and all this crazy talk.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it started back with President Roosevelt.
Oh, yeah. Well, then he was a pretty sharp guy,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, and I uh, I want to ask you something. You know, I think we are in the process of unrolling a form of disclosure. It's not going to be much. Everybody think, oh, we're going to know everything. Yeah, forget it. That's not going to happen. Knowledge is power. The government wants to hold on to that knowledge. But there probably will be some form of official disclosure, which has already happened, but
I
there'll be
think
another.
that's what's kind of going now. I mean, at least now we got people in Congress and the government that's saying yes, there's something here. Because all the fighter jets and fighter planes are filming them. They've been filming them for years. There's so many of them here now. Everybody's seeing them, so they can't deny it now. So now they have to agree with us. And what are they? They went from UFO to UAP, right? And that's close. Unidentified aerial phenomenon, right? So
Yeah,
they're not saying crafts, and they're saying there's no evidence that this is a spaceship. There's no evidence that this is a craft, and that's right. They are right on that. That's what's behind this, behind what they're saying. There is no evidence of crafts. There is evidence of living creatures, living
yeah.
entities, living organisms.
I think the government is going to come out here probably in the next few months. They, they're going to say, oh, yeah, there are aliens. There's this huge mothership coming in, and they're coming here to kill you. So you better
Yeah.
be scared.
Right. Yeah.
There,
And that's one of my points true too, because if they actually said, hey, guess what, everybody? The Phoenix Lights had something to do with taking the Hohokam people away. Isn't that great? How many people would actually stay in that Valley of the Sun, and continue to work and continue to live? As a matter of fact, when all that went down, all right, when all that stuff went down, the people who saw what was going down, they hid in the caves. All right. This is what oral tradition says of the real history of Phoenix, Arizona. This is what Charles Holbrook writes in his journal about South Mountain is
Mhm.
when this was going on, there were some that hid in caves. And when it was all over with, they vowed never to live in this Valley of the Sun ever again. They cursed this Valley of the Sun. They knew that if they're going to continue to live in what is now called Phoenix, that they would have to go back to war with these spirits of the earth and sky. So they buried the gold because they knew that one day the Mayans would return and start over and reuse this gold. And some of the myths and legends talk about how the Phoenix Lights is actually guarding and protecting the gold that's buried in South Mountain. And they buried the
Okay.
gold and they went back to their homeland of Mexico and they vowed never to return here in the Valley of the Sun. And this was a vacant desert for over 400 years. There were tribes on the outskirts of Phoenix who saw the lights, who saw the Quetzalcoatls, who saw
Mhm.
the orbs, but they were afraid and they understood what had happened to their people, their ancestors who dealt with the Phoenix Lights. They became missing. They disappeared. And this is the reason why we go back to the Native American who's teaching me about the rock
Yeah.
art. And I say, hey, I think there's a connection with the rock art and the Phoenix Lights. Why he stopped talking with me. You understand? Because he was taught the correct way, the correct interpretations that yes, his ancestors dealt with the Phoenix Lights, dealt with these things in the sky, and they were taken away. And this is a taboo. We are not meant to understand this. We're not
Yeah.
meant to know about these things. These are scary things. That's why I say I don't think there will ever be a disclosure, a full disclosure. And the
No,
only
that,
way we're going to come out and find out what's really going on is people like you, people like me, and other people who actually do their research, go out on the field, not listen to hearsay. Oh, a spaceship, whatever, seen in Phoenix, but there's no evidence of this. But go down and do your history, do your field work. You go out and find out what's going on. Don't believe me, man. Go off and investigate this yourself.
yeah.
When you do, you will get your answers that you are looking
Yeah.
for. I
There,
did.
because it's out there, and there are spiritual beings, there are plasma intelligences, and there are peop entities living in caves, and there are people or entities coming from the sky. But let me ask you something. If a spaceship came and landed in your backyard, the door came open, and a guy looking like kind of like you walk and say, "Come, do you want to go for a ride?"
I'd
Would you
say,
would you do it?
I'd say, here's my video camera. Record all that and get back to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
You
not going. He can
no,
record it though. Hey, yeah, do me a favor. Go there and take some pictures of all that and bring it back to me. But I'm good. I'll stay here.
yeah. Yeah, you really can't trust those guys because there is, yeah, a lot of good ones, but there are some too that doesn't have our best interest at heart, and there are stories from
Yes.
people on the crafts that is not necessarily all that good. But some of them are really good. So I think we got both.
Yeah. Well, like I said before, we have good ones and we have bad ones. So it's up to us to determine which are the good and which are the bad.
Yeah,
And I believe right now what we're mostly seeing in the skies now isn't the good ones.
yeah.
That's what
Well,
history tells us. That's what the rock art is telling us.
mhm. We're getting down to the end here, but let people know again where they can get a hold of you, get your books, and how to contact with you on Facebook and places.
You can find my books on Amazon, Jeff Woolwine. Just go ahead and search my name, Jeff Woolwine. And then you can find me on Facebook, the Phoenix Lights, Petroglyphs in the Sky, and also my YouTube channel. And like I said, I'm continuing. I've been doing this for years. I've been chasing these things down for many years, and now I'm here at Mount Lemmon, and I'm at the perfect lookout spot to see these things. So look for up and coming new orb sightings on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I thank you very much for being with us. This was interesting, and
Thank you.
there's some new concept here put into the middle of it that people should think about.
Yes, yes. We have to look at what history says UAPs are. We have to take a second look at these petroglyphs because I believe that holds the answers.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you for
Well,
having me.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you very much for being with us. And for you, those of you out there watching, if you like what you heard, please subscribe and watch for the next videos that come. And so in the meantime, be good to each other.